Well, we get it rolling on the Krueg Show. We're about to do a mock draft. Jordan Elliott in the house. We're going to talk a little 49er football in advance of next Thursday's NFL draft. We're going to do a mock draft going back and forth using the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator. But literally minutes before we've gone live here, the NBA has made a ruling. They have suspended Draymond Green for Game 3 of the first-round playoff series against the Sacramento Kings. Just an atrocious decision by the NBA, I think, and to me, this eliminates Golden State. I mean, I think Golden State is going to have an impossible time winning without Draymond Green. They were already a small team. They cannot lose a player like that and beat this team, I don't believe. This is a crushing blow for the Warriors, and one that I think was grossly unfair. Jordan, what'd you think? I mean, to me, what jumped out was that Domantas Sabonis made a non-basketball play. If you make a play in your sport that's not a play that is a normal play in your sport, if you go beyond the walls of the norms in a particular sport, like, for example, you get mad at the pitcher. He throws inside to you. You pick up your baseball bat like Campy Campaneris did once upon a time and hurl it at the pitcher. You've now gone outside the normal baseball behavior. If you're playing football and suddenly a guy runs you off into the bench and you grab his head and slam it against the bench, that's no longer a football play. You've now gone beyond, and anything that comes after that should be to the person who initiated the non-play, the non-sport play, should be 100% responsible. The non-sport play that I saw in last night's Warrior-Kings game was Domantas Sabonis grabbing the leg like in a headlock, but it was Draymond's leg, not allowing him to move that leg. Everything that came after that, as long as it was somewhat reciprocal response, should have been 100% on Sabonis. And so for Draymond Green to be suspended and to be giving the Sacramento Kings a easily a competitive advantage in Game 3 because of something that was initiated by their player is wrong. It's a disastrous bad call by the league, and it's just wrong on so many levels. Give me your perspective.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that Draymond's response was disproportionate. That's the thing that I think when giving this opinion, I will be just out front saying he shouldn't have stepped on the guy the way he did. I think that it was something in a moment of frustration. I think emotions got the better of him. So I'm not defending the act of Draymond literally stepping on Domantas Sabonis. But to me, what really stands out was actually what had happened before he had grabbed Draymond's ankle. And it was the reason why he ended up on the floor in the first place. If you look at, there was an angle that kind of was more towards where the coaches stand and like by the scorer's table. The reason Sabonis ended up on the ground was because he had a fistful of Klay Thompson's jersey, and he was literally trying to pull Klay Thompson away from the basket or down to the ground. And hey, it's the playoffs. People get grabby. There's a lot more physical, play around the basket, fighting for the ball. But that's the thing that's kind of gotten glossed over in all of this for me, is that Sabonis put himself in this situation with what I felt like was a dirty play, grabbing. It's not like he got tangled up or it was a little incidental contact. He literally had a fistful of the guy's jersey, tried pulling Klay to the ground. And if you look at Klay, he almost falls over and is able to gain his own balance back. So to me, the guy put himself in this position in the first place. And then obviously grabbing the ankle is a little bush league. And then Draymond, it's kind of a two wrongs don't make a right situation, because again, I don't think there's any way that you can really logically defend Draymond stepping on him the way he did, especially given the fact he has the reputation he has, knowing that the optics of it, even if there's logic, that paints a bigger picture, the optics were always going to be bad. So for me, what it comes down to is, the punishment allocated to me did not fit the crime, right? Like, I think him getting the flagrant 2 and getting kicked out, more than fine with that. I think in that situation, I thought that they handled it about as well as they could have. I think that, again, what gets glossed over in all of this is that this doesn't happen if Sabonis isn't doing something that you could argue is dirty as well. And the thing that really stood out to me, Larry, is, we always hear players in sports talk about codes, right? And guys breaking the code. If you look at the response we've seen on social media from some prominent players, I know Dame Lillard weighed in on it. The majority of them were like, hey, that should have been a take foul on Sabonis. Not many of them are jumping out. I haven't seen any really come out and condemn Draymond for this. And if he did something that was so overly just terrible, I feel like more players would be speaking out about kind of that code breaking and the things you hear about that. So at the end of the day, I thought that the flagrant 2 and the ejection was warranted. It would have been fine. It's the playoffs. We get it. We move on. But him getting suspended, it's awful. And it's another example in my eyes of the NBA being so heavily carried by superstars. This league is going to be so lost when LeBron James and Steph Curry retire, because they do so many things like this that are just the ratings drive this business, and you literally are weakening your own product by handing out a punishment that you did not need to, that was completely unnecessary. And you used incidents that had happened nearly a decade ago to justify a punishment you're doling out in 2023. So I just think it's another example of the NBA stepping on its own feet and just making a mockery of what could be one of the better run sports leagues in the world yet again.
Don't take guys off the floor. You want people to say your league's not rigged, then don't take guys off the floor in the playoffs. You don't see the NFL take, oh, wait a second, Tom Brady's just not playing on Sunday.
Exactly.
Why? Because everybody would be, that's a farce. Fine him, suspend him, week 1 next year. Do not take your players off the floor or off the field voluntarily in the playoffs. I mean, it's just absolutely asinine. And to me, it's really offensive too, because Sabonis pulled Clay, then he hurled his own body, which is a 250, 260-pound body, into the legs of other players. Easily could have blown out somebody's knee, just didn't. He initiated all of that. He threw away Clay. He went to the ground. Then he got Draymond's leg in a hold. He initiated 3 aggressive moves there. Car God says, as a Kings fan, Sabonis should also get suspended. How about wait? Neither should be suspended. Let him play. Send him a fine. Write him a letter. People pay to see these guys. People pay to see the players, right?
You know what really stood out to me too? I don't know. Did you have a chance to see Sabonis's press conference after the game? Because I thought it was very telling. I believe
he was selling it, right? He was selling it.
I think Kendra Andrews asked the question, and I thought it was a fantastic follow-up. They asked him about it, and he was talking about how awful what Draymond did was, and there's no place for it. And Kendra Andrews, I believe, asked him straight up, well, did you grab his foot before that happened? And he goes, oh, it's the playoffs. Things happen. And I thought that to me, I'm like, dude, come on. If that's the case, then let's all put this aside. Let's move on. If anything, and again, this is where I think the NBA is just, it's ridiculous how far behind the NFL they are in terms of marketing their product. You could have Game 3 be one of the most watched games you're going to get all postseason, because everyone's going to want to see Draymond and Sabonis again. They're going to want to see this buildup and all the anger and all the just vitriol that's being fueled from both sides going into this. And instead, you take out one of the more electrifying personalities in the sport, thus removing the chance. I still think they can win without him. So I'm not quite on the same page, I think, there with you. Like, I think they
I don't. I really don't. You think they can beat Sacramento without Draymond?
You know what I think is going to happen? I think they're going to have to play Kuminga more, and I think that they need a little bit more athleticism, and they need a little bit more somebody who can create their own offense. And it's going to be a tough ask. You know, he's still a young player. He doesn't have obviously anywhere near the experience or the defensive expertise Draymond does, but I think that ultimately it could end up being a good thing for them, because it's going to force some guys who haven't stepped up in the first couple games to play a little bit more. But I really what it does too is it weakens your product in the long run too, right? I'm not saying that they should cater to guys like Steph and LeBron and stuff like that, but I also think that when you're thinking about the bottom line of your business, right, people tune in to watch guys like Steph Curry and LeBron James. And when you're actively going out of your way, if Draymond had done something worthy of suspension, this argument can't be made. But given the fact that I think it was a huge overreaction and completely unwarranted, you're now putting one of your biggest cash cows at a disadvantage. And Steph Curry, KD, LeBron, any of these guys getting bounced in the first round is bad for their bottom line. And they actively did something they didn't need to that's going to affect their own bottom line, which is the thing I can't wrap my head around. If anything, I could see the people that wanted Draymond suspended getting upset if they didn't suspend him, making the argument that, oh, they're protecting Steph Curry because they need to protect ratings and they need to protect this and that. They went the complete opposite route and did something that's detrimental to their own product. And I can't understand why they would do something like that.
It's an amazing thing. This is the league where, you had McHale clothesline Lambeer, and he was given a common foul. And Lambeer went to the line. Lambeer was aerial, and he headlocked him in the air, knocked him to the ground, could have killed him, could have paralyzed him, and common foul. And now today we're here. And guess what? It's not just Warriors fans that are going to be pissed about this. It's Kings fans too. Why? Because now the Kings might have beaten the Warriors straight up, but now there's this. Now the Warrior fans are going to be able to say, hey, you know what? We didn't have Draymond. Yeah, we got Draymond taken away from us. To me, it takes away the win from Sacramento in a lot of ways, even if Sacramento makes it more hollow. Sacramento probably is good enough to get it done without this. Now there's this hanging over it. That's weak. It's just weak. If I was a Kings fan, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, no, do not give them some ready-made, bogus excuse for why they lost. Put their guy out there and let's beat them fair and square. And if I was a Kings fan, I would not like this. Does it help their chances of advancing? Yeah, but I don't want there to be any ambiguity in who was the better team here. Put their best players on the court and let's battle it out for as long as this series goes. Mark Hope says, shout out Sabonis for playing the player. Yeah, well, there's that
He's
too.
Right. He's right, and you would have hoped that Draymond would have learned after the finals, doing it on the biggest stage, getting baited into something like that, because
terrible.
Draymond.
Draymond's known for this now. He's synonymous with costing his team.
And like on a human being level, right? Like there's certain levels of respect that we can expect as human beings. So I get it. Stepping over another human being, grabbing their leg. Like there's certain things that just you're going to invoke a reaction out of somebody by doing that. But at the end of the day, as much as it sucks, like you'd like to think at this point, Draymond knows that it's a no-win situation for him if he responds. No matter how justified he may feel he is in responding, you just can't do it. And I've seen a couple comments mentioning it. I think they're all spot on. He did get baited, I felt like. I'm a big Liverpool guy. I love watching the Premier League. It felt like watching one of these guys where they barely get their ankles clipped running by and they're on the ground for 5 minutes writhing around in pain. I thought that Sabonis sold it. I thought he baited Draymond into a response, and it seems like they got what they wanted, which really sucks.
Well, and it's a double loss for Golden State because their player got ejected in the game. So you lost Draymond for the end of this game, and then you lose him for the next game. It's just a double loss for Golden State. Vicky Pellich's Sabonis is a dirty player. The NBA is a crap league. The playoff ratings this season are headed for the gutter. Yeah, that's just low grade. And this is where the NFL is worlds better. Not only would this not happen in the NFL, if it ever did happen, there would be people trashing Roger Goodell, trashing the NFL. Why would you allow the credibility of your most important game to ever be called into question? The NFL is still trying to get beyond that Saints PI call. That was atrocious. But this is self-inflicted. Self-inflicted. Arturo says the Warriors are getting hit by the NBA for money. I don't know. Come on. You don't want the Warriors in the next round against the Lakers? You want Steph Curry sitting at home? Really? I would say anything involving money should be favoring Golden State. All right. Let's do this. We're going to do a mock draft right here on the Niners. Next Thursday's the draft. Jordan knows as much about it as anybody. He's here, and we're going to do a mock draft. And we're going to go pro football, the NFL draft simulator on profootballnetwork.com. Jordan's going to have the. We'll just go back and forth with the Niners picks, and if you want to trade back, you can. I'll give you what's out there. The interesting thing on this particular mock is that I did one the other day, and it offered a trade up from Green Bay, and they were offering Darnell Savage. And I love Darnell Savage. So I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'll take Darnell Savage in a heartbeat. So there's always cap implications to these things as well. So, I don't know what exactly the cap implications of all these trades are. But if if a trade comes up when it's your turn to pick, you just decide if you want the trade. Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Here we go. Let's draft. All right. First pick is Bryce Young, and they're off and running. And the beautiful part about going fast is we're already at 50. And now we're at 60, now we're at 70, now we're at 80, now we're at 90. Niners pick at 99. And there you go. You're at 99, and the Browns are calling. They want 99 and pick 222 for 126, 140 in their fifth next year. You want to make that move? You want to reject it? You want to counter it? Or you want to just pick?
I would actually accept that in a heartbeat. If I got offered that, I would take that without a second thought.
Let's take it. Let's take it then. You want to take it?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's great players in that. There's players that I really like in that range, 126, 140, getting the extra pick next year and unloading one of your sevens. You already have, or I think that's the end of the sixth round, but they have so many picks at the end of the sixth and then 4 in the seventh. I think, yeah.
Okay, so now since they pick 101, that was the 99th pick. Browns traded up. They took Zach Harrison. Tank Dell went 100. So now you're at 101, and since you've yet to pick, why don't you make the pick? Who do you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we talked about this player a little bit earlier. I figured we could get into it now because I don't know.
You're looking for need? Yeah, you're looking for need here. You're looking for a certain particular player on the board. I can give you what the board looks like.
So actually, I see a player right there who I would be interested in taking. The way I'm looking at it with these picks, Larry, is the odds of these guys being impact starters right away are very minimal, right? If that happens, you're playing with house money. You can't expect it picking 99, 101, 102. So I want a guy who's going to be on my roster for the foreseeable future that I could rely on in a depth role right away, but who has a long-term future that I can develop into a quality player. So I'm not necessarily drafting for positional need, more so just if I see a guy who I think is an NFL player for the next 5 to 7 years, that's who I want to get. So that's why I would actually take a wide receiver here, believe it or not, and I would take Jaden Reed from Michigan State.
Wow. Okay. I just did a video on this player today. This is a Michigan State player who started at Western Michigan and transferred in and played 3 years for Michigan State, and good football player. I mean, really good football player. I like Jaden Reed. Since I have my notes right in front of me here, I'll tell you a little bit about him. He, according to Mike Garafolo, the Niners just met with him. He's 5'11", about 190, had a really good junior year, battled some minor injuries senior year, 26 touchdowns in 4 seasons, versatile player. This guy can be a punt returner, kick returner. He can be an X. He can be a flanker. He can be a slot receiver. He's got great ball skills. He's an Illinois kid, grew up in Chicago, Aurora, lives in Naperville, ran 4.45 in Indy. But when you flip on the film, you can see the deep speed for sure. And he's got functional speed. He's played at Western Michigan as a freshman, then transferred to Michigan State. Had a huge game this year against Wisconsin, double overtime, 9 catches, fierce competitor. So you're going Jaden Reed. He's not the biggest receiver. He's relatively small, but I kind of see a little bit of Terry McLaurin here.
Yeah, I like that comp. I see a guy. He's I hate to sound overly simplified. He's a football player, man. Like he's got great ball skills. I thought that he looked good running routes. I think he can get better there still. I don't think he's a finished product by any means, but I saw a high enough floor where I think he's somebody who could come in. You could count on him to be a part of the offense in year one. But as we get into this future where, I think the 49ers could potentially keep Debo and Aiyuk even at the hefty price tags both will command. But if you start entering a reality where one of those guys might be gone, they might have to deal one to free up space for other positions. I think it'd be smart to just always have a contingency plan in place at the receiver position. The Niners have taken at least one receiver in 5 of the 6 drafts they've had under Shanahan and Lynch. The only year they didn't was 2021. So I think that they've been very keen on just taking one of these guys every year that they feel can contribute at the position. And to me, when I look at Jaden Reed, I see a guy who he may not ever be a, superstar, but I see a guy who could be a, reliable contributor in an NFL offense for 5 to 7 years. And I think given where they're picking, it's tremendous value. And I'm a big fan of his game. And I was really happy to hear they met with him because I actually wrote an article for Niners Nation today. The Niners, with these in-draft visits that they have, the in-person, pre-draft visits they have, it's usually a really good indicator of guys they have serious interest in. They don't really do the smokescreen stuff too often, so I would love to learn that they did have some interest in Jaden Reed, and hopefully they end up taking him.
Now I'm up at the very next pick 102, the last pick of the 3rd round, and this is going to be the last pick Friday night. I actually think this is a great trade spot to trade down because I think, just like everybody else, the people will have, they will have put in a whole day of work, and maybe you're one of these teams at the top of the 4th round, and there's a player that's falling, and they're like, hey, you know what? We can make our night better by just trading some future pick or some other picks up a couple spots and get the player that we want tonight, so we can plan what we're going to do better tomorrow. So I think this is an attractive trade spot, and I think the Niners will get some attractive trades here. But there's no trades being offered here. You got the wide receiver. Now, the need was offensive tackle, but I don't see an offensive tackle there that I would take with this pick. Then the need goes to, what's the second need? Probably maybe edge. And there's DJ Johnson, who's a NorCal guy. There's Nick Hampton, who I like a lot, but he's a little undersized. There's Byron Young from Tennessee. He's not truly an edge rusher. I think he's more of he is an edge rusher, but he's he's like a 3-4 outside backer type. Isaiah McGuire's interesting. There's a bunch of guys, but I think this might be a little early for that group. On offense, what's the quarterback situation? You know what I mean? That's the other one. Like, to me, I'm debating right here between whatever quarterback I may want and right now you could get Tanner McKee, Jaron Hall, Clayton Tune, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Max Duggan, Aiden O'Connell, Jake Hayner. They're all there. What do you think based on they've met with DTR 3 times? When I read the 3rd meeting, I thought, seems like a smokescreen. Right? Come on. You're going to meet with a quarterback that you like 3 times. It almost screams out they like some other quarterback, and that's why they're meeting with DTR 3 times. I think they maybe like Jaron Hall. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think if you take a quarterback that early, that would mean you have to move Trey Lance, right? Like, I don't think there's any way you could justify taking.
Or it may mean that Brock Purdy's done for the year.
Could be that too, yeah.
Right. What did you make of the Brock Purdy comment, by the way?
I just think he's setting it up so that there's not these crazy expectations. I didn't read too much into it, to be honest.
What do you make of the DTR 3 meetings? You think that's a smokescreen? You think they really want DTR?
I think there's a lot to like there. Adam Peters certainly has the UCLA connection, so I'm sure he's been keeping a close eye on DTR for a few years now. When I spoke to him at the Combine, he had mentioned they had some meetings at the East-West Shrine game with some scouts there that he cracked a pretty big smile when he talked about the possibility of playing in this offense, just the franchise in general. So I think there's mutual interest from both sides. If they were to take a quarterback, I like DTR just for the fact alone, Larry, that he can create a reasonable floor with his rushing ability and his ability to extend plays on its own. I think there's so much value in that. I think we talked about that before, where just having the ability to create offense on your own when things go off script is huge for a rookie quarterback. And while I don't think that Brock Purdy is necessarily the athlete that DTR is, we saw a lot of that from Purdy, where he was able to extend plays, get out of the pocket, improvise on his own. And any concerns that there might be, because the biggest knock I've seen on DTR really is the size. But I think we just saw this past year with Brock Purdy, if you can play the position, the size isn't nearly as important as it's made out to be. I don't think we need these prototypical 6'4" stand in the pocket quarterbacks anymore. Like, you can be a smaller, more agile athlete at that position and succeed. I see a path where DTR would make a ton of sense for them if they're in the market for a new quarterback.
Okay, so I'm on the running back page because even though they have Elijah Mitchell, J.P. Mason, Ty Davis-Price, McCaffrey, of all the players that are on the board, to me, this group is the most exciting. There's 3 or 4 backs here that I think are really special. Let me throw them out to you. Izzy Abanaconda from Pittsburgh. I just loved his film. I mean, when I watch him, I think, man, this guy's super special. I was talking to Brad the other day. He's a big fan of Sean Tucker from Syracuse. I read this guy on Niners Nation, Elliott something, and he's got Roschon Johnson. And then you took me down a rabbit hole of Roschon Johnson film, and guess what? I love Roschon Johnson. I mean, he's explosive and big and really explosive. Kind of reminds me of a little bit of the guy that Texas had that's playing that played in Houston for a while. Played in Atlanta, Dante Foreman. As far as just straight line, this guy puts his foot in the ground and goes. Then I love Tyjae Spears. I saw him rumble against SC late in the year for Tulane. I love him. And then I love Keaton Mitchell, who's down here from East Carolina, who's super, super fast. But there's also running backs all throughout the draft. So what do you think of this group of running backs? I mean, how much do you like Roschon Johnson? Would you go Roschon right here?
I'd be tempted to. I think, I just was talking about how, for me, it's not as much about positional need. It's about players who I see being NFL guys for at least half a decade. And I think Roschon fits the mold. If I didn't already go Jaden Reed, it would be an automatic yes. But I also could see maybe spreading out these picks by attacking an edge rusher here, attacking, a corner, a DB maybe. So I like Roschon, and if you feel he's the best player left on the board, I wouldn't have any problems with them taking him. But I also could see the argument, and I would probably lean towards maybe drafting one of those corners or one of those edge guys just for the sake of maximizing the amount of value you'll have, even though it is the end of the third round.
I think I'm going corner just because there's so many good corners here. Jacorian Bennett, I really like. I love Riley Moss from Iowa. Love Rajon Wright. But I'm going Keitrell Clark. Tony Pauline, who's a buddy of mine, told me that the Niners have a lot of interest in Keitrell Clark. He's a big slot corner he's not big. I mean, I should say he's only 5'10", 5'11", but he's a really nice player, tremendous ball skills. I like Keitrell Clark. I think he's going to be, to me, he reminds me of K1. He's like a K1 Williams. He's just a big-time player. So now you're up, and we are in round 4 because we traded down. Several of the players that I liked are gone now. Tanner McKee, Izzy Abanaconda, Byron Young from Tennessee, Jaron Hall, the quarterback, Schoonmaker, the tight end, Michael Wilson, the Stanford receiver, Jonathan Mingo, Clayton Tune. Those guys are all gone. What do you want to do here? You're at pick 126. I'm giving you the top of the board here. Roschon's still there. Owen Papo ran great for Auburn's there. Jacqueline Roy, a lot of people think it's a sleeper. Brock Purdy's college receiver, Xavier Hutchinson, but we already went receiver. Diabate from Utah, Byron Young, who I love from Alabama, McClendon Curtis. I like DeMarvion Overshone from Texas. I think he's a terrific linebacker. The Outland Trophy winners there. What do you think? Trey Dean, Tyjae Spears. What is there a position that you'd like to see the board? And I can call it up for you.
Maybe the tackles that are left, but I feel like the issue once you get to this part of the draft is it's a lot of redundancy where a lot of the quality prospects are going to be receivers or corners. There's not a ton of really, at least in my eyes, from what I've seen in the big boards I've looked at, the players I've watched, there's not a ton of diversity in terms of the talent being spread around at multiple positions. So I feel like you get to a point where you're either reaching for a guy that you could probably get later, or you're doubling up and taking a second corner or a second receiver. The guy that stood out to me that was still available is Travius Hodges Tomlinson. I believe he's the nephew of LaDainian Tomlinson, Hall of Fame running back. He He has some, NFL lineage there. He's a little
very small, 5'7",
small.
180, 175, but he's a dynamic player.
He really is. And, guys who kind of have changed my outlook are DJ Reed, Marcus Jones last year out of Houston. I really liked Marcus Jones. The biggest knock on him was he was undersized. I thought he looked fantastic in New England. So I'm willing to bet on guys like that who have shown that they can play a little bit bigger than their size might indicate. He was the guy that jumped out to me that was there. Another one would be another receiver. And again, this is where it's like, how comfortable would you be going receiver twice with your first 3 selections? And it's Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia. So I had him
big and fast. No question.
In my recent mock draft, and he's a guy where I think you can see the RAS score there, 9.97. You just take a chance on an athlete like that with the hopes that you can develop him, because you can teach a guy a lot of the nuances that come with playing the receiver position. You can't teach a guy to be 6'4" and run as fast as he does. So if you look at his numbers at the receiver position, mockdraftables.com is great. If you guys ever see those spider charts, that's typically where it comes from. And they have this huge database of not only this draft class, but I believe it's the last 25 or so of players at every position. And it takes all their scouting numbers and it tells you what percentile a player tests in at their given position. So Bryce Ford Wheaton tested in the 87th percentile for height, 90th percentile for weight, 89th percentile for arm length, 90th percentile for 40-yard dash, 95th percentile for vertical jump, and 89th percentile for broad jump. So he's just an incredible athlete. And I think he's a guy, he had some really impressive games that are on tape during his time at West Virginia as well. It was funny. I actually asked him about facing off with Brock Purdy in Iowa State when he was there, and he had some good stories about some of the battles they had. He's a guy who I just think you bet on the upside here, Larry. I'm weighing whether or not, given the first pick we made, if it's worth it to go there right now, but just I could make a case for it. I feel like just simply on the upside and the return you could get if a player like that pans out, because I think he's somebody who's getting slept on. I think we actually talked about it on your show last week. Like, that's a guy where I think they're not getting as much love maybe from public mocks as they might be among NFL front offices. But it'd be really tempting. The other guy that I've heard great things about and I've liked what I've seen from is Ricky Stromberg. I think that's another one that's really interesting if you're looking to fortify the offensive line. But again, that's kind of not necessarily drafting for need. You're kind of planning for the future, I feel like, because I think Jake Brendel has been more than adequate in that role. But he's a guy who's a really, really good center who has some great tape as well. So I'd probably honestly lean him there just for the sake of covering more bases than just continuing to take wide receivers. But it's tough.
Well, here's the question I have. Here'd be the question I have. What's up with Aiyuk? Okay, let's talk about the Niners for a second. As far as, and I just tweeted this out earlier this week. And I'm like, okay, the Chris Conley signing, they signed him to a 1-year deal. Pretty interesting. This guy's a crazy athlete. He ran 4.35. He's got a 45-inch vertical. Yeah, he's floated around to a couple spots, but he's not just a camp body. There's so many levels of receivers that are lower than Chris Conley. So I thought that was a really interesting signing. Why? Because teams typically carry 5 or 6 wide receivers. The Niners have Debo, Aiyuk, Jennings, Ray, Danny Gray. That's 5 right there. They had Tay Martin on the practice squad. Now they're adding Conley. So that's 7. They're at 7 right now. In addition, they're talking to, Jonathan Mingo, Ronnie Bell, Nathaniel Dell, Demario Douglas, Michael Wilson, Jaden, who we just took right there. Jaden, what's Jaden's last name again?
Reed.
Jaden Reed. So that would, if they draft any of these guys, that would be the 8th receiver. Then you look at the price tag of paying Aiyuk, it's going to be like about close to $15 million. And I'm looking at the receiver market going, you know what? If I'm the New York Giants at 25, I might rather go with Aiyuk than some of the other receivers. I think I'd rather have Aiyuk than Zay Flowers. If I'm the Texans at 33, I think I'd rather Aiyuk than Josh Downs. I'm just saying, and the reason I bring this up is because the Giants pick at 25. If they traded for Aiyuk, the Niners could wind up getting Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. Darnell Wright, who might be a plug-and-play right tackle from Tennessee. The Atabare kid from Northwestern is there. Emmanuel Forbes, a true number one corner in my mind, he's there. There's a lot of interesting different. Kalijah Cansey in this mock is going 51. I could see Kalijah Cansey being the fourth member of their front line as much as they love dominant defensive linemen. God knows he's dominant. So I don't know. I mean, do you think there's credence to the possibility that Aiyuk could be traded on draft day, and how high of a pick do you think they could get? Maybe Aiyuk and a conditional pick for a late first?
I think it's really tough because if we're looking at it through the lens of watching Aiyuk as much as we do, being around the 49ers, and as much as 49ers fans know how talented he is, given how much they've seen him play, you'd have to think the conversation doesn't start at anything less than the first. But if you look at what some of these guys have been moved for recently, some much more accomplished players, even though they're a bit older and more expensive, and Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, some of these moves at receiver, like the market isn't great based on what we've seen the last couple of years. And there might be a team that's willing to offer a pick around 23, 24, seeing the potential that Aiyuk has, seeing his ability to win one-on-one against man coverage, against NFL corners. It's really hard to press him. He's super, super underrated after the catch. I think that's one thing, we see George Kittle and Deebo Samuel running over guys every week. It kind of overshadows just how kind of shifty and how good Brandon Aiyuk is with the ball in his hands. So I could see a team that maybe is willing to bet on, I don't know if potential is the right word, because I think he's at the point where he's shown what he's capable of. But I think there's a team out there that knows, hey, the next 4 years are going to be the best of his career. I'm willing to cough up this first now, knowing that I'm paying for the best years, rather than, you get a guy like Devontae Adams. He's still great now, but a lot of teams are paying a premium for the years he had spent with Green Bay dominating, if that makes sense. I think there might be a team out there that has the vision of making Aiyuk their number one wide receiver. I know the Giants haven't mentioned a ton. I think he'd fit in great with that offense. Brian Dable obviously showed during his time in Buffalo, he has no problem scheming up an offense around a talented wide receiver. We saw the numbers Diggs was able to put up there in Buffalo. So it makes sense. But if you're the 49ers, to me, you find a way to make the money work. I think that he just complements Deebo Samuel so well. And I think with the way the TV deal's going, Larry, and the way the cap projected to spike, they could find a way to make it work. And I don't think that this is the draft that you move him in. If you really are that set on creating financial flexibility, do it next year. Don't do it this year in a draft where you've made it pretty clear with your actions that you don't really value the first round all that much, and you don't really have too high of an opinion on a lot of guys in the first round. I think next year is a much deeper class at the top, and I think that would be the time to make this move rather than settling for a range of picks that I don't know that there's a difference maker you could feel confident in that should be available around the time that he would get a pick back for him.
It's interesting. It definitely is interesting. So, okay, so you're on the board here. You're on the clock. What do you want to pick at 126? We've floated a couple of different ideas. Would you want to go with the receiver? You want to go with the offensive lineman? What is your pick going to be at 126?
I'm thinking on this one, it's really hard. I'm going to go Stromberg out of Arkansas because I think he's a guy that can thrive at the next level and could be a center for your team for the next 5 to 7 years and beyond that as well. But I've liked what I've seen from him. I would take Stromberg and I'd feel pretty good about it.
Okay, sounds good. I'm now at 140. Beginning of the 5th round, and Dallas is called. And this is a move that I think I would also make. They're offering to move up, you can move back 2 spots from 140 to 142, and in exchange, they'll take that pick 216 and they'll give you pick 190. So you can move up 26 spots for moving down 2 spots.
Yeah, absolutely. I would do that.
I'm doing that. Okay, so I do that, and now the Saints have called, and they're saying, will you move down 4 spots and give you pick 255 for 227 and 257?
I wouldn't do it. At this point, I don't want more 7th-round picks. It's going to be hard enough for some of these guys to make the final roster as is. I think moving up, for the sake of, moving up earlier into like the 5th round, 6th round makes sense, but adding more picks towards the end of the 7th, I don't really see it at this point.
Okay, so So we've got a offensive lineman and we've got a receiver and a slot corner. I'll tell you a guy that I really like. I think is a sleeper. It's the Byron Young from Alabama. He's 6'3", 295. I just when I watch this guy's got super long arms, huge hands. I think he's a perfect guy to play in a rotation, as in a movement front where you're stunting a lot. I love the way this guy came flying off blocks. Great athlete from the state of Mississippi. Went to high school in Mississippi. I'm taking Byron Young from Alabama. Now you're up at 155.
All right.
What would you like to do here at 155? Is there any particular position you want to see? The highest rated guy on the board is Ronnie Hickman from Ohio State on this mock, but there's Corey Trice, who they worked out or at least met with. Riley Moss is still there from Iowa. I think that would be a very attractive player. He's really good. Brad loves Demario Douglas. I'm worried because he had 6 muffed punts. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of muffed punts. Jay Ward's a pretty good safety from LSU. Rajon Wright's a big corner. Payne Durham's got sticky hands, the tight end from Purdue. Ronnie Bell they met with. DTR's still there if you want to go quarterback. Dante Stills, they met with him. He's kind of an undersized D lineman who can kind of play in a movement front. Inside-outside guy. Deuce Vaughn. Keaton Mitchell, if you want that home run hitter speedster in the backfield that I think's attractive. What do you think? Who do you want? What direction you want to go at 155?
So I really like Jay Ward. Jay Ward was one of my favorite conversations I had at the Combine because almost every single answer, he wasted no time at all with any of his answers. It was straight to the point. It was very quick. It was very poignant. And it just gave off the, I'm here to play football vibes. And it was in a very respectful way, I want to add, too. But I loved that kind of vibe I got after, just talking to him for 15 minutes or so. And I think he's the kind of player that the 49ers would fall in love with, where he's really versatile, played a ton of snaps in LSU secondary as a safety, played a ton as a slot corner, looked really good in both, was great in his run fits, really physical player, gets downhill fast. And again, you could tell he's about his business and he's showing up to play football, and there's not going to be any questions about the dedication and the level of intensity he's going to bring day in and day out. And I know that stuff sounds cliche and it gets very, it may sound overblown, but the 49ers have made it very clear that stuff matters to them, and they will pass on an extremely, they might pass on a guy who's more physically gifted for a guy that they believe is going to come in and is going to work harder. Like, they made it very clear how important the culture is to them. So when you have a guy like Jay Ward who has the physical gifts and that mentality, I could see the 49ers falling head over heels for a prospect like that. So I'd be really tempted to go Jay Ward there. I've mocked him in similar areas in the few mock drafts I've done, and I think he'd be a great value for them because this is the beginning of the 5th round or just the end of the 4th round?
This is kind of middle 5th round.
Middle 5th round. Yeah, that'd be a great spot, I think, for getting him. And hey, they've hit on a couple of those 5th round picks over the last few years, so maybe their luck continues with this one. Jay Ward
at LSU. You can't go wrong with the LSU guys. I think LSU just gets some really top tier guys. I remember I heard an interview of Arians, the former head coach of the Bucs, and he's like, man, you got to take an extra look at those LSU kids because they get premier prospects. They really do consistently. And then that's another thing. It's like, a lot of times it's about the greatest athletes, the greatest high school athletes usually go to Georgia, Alabama, LSU. Sometimes the guys who wind up even not necessarily playing at those places wind up being some of the better athletes. All right, now we're at pick 164. And so this is where? This is towards the back of the 5th round. This is like the Niners' lucky round. Let's take a look who's on the board here. Demario Douglas is interesting. Rajon Wright, Payne Durham. Here's the thing. Do you want that quarterback? If you want that quarterback, are the Niners wanting another quarterback? It seems like they want another quarterback. I mean, and yet, and DTR is staring you right in the face. Then there's Keaton Mitchell, who's just an absolute home run hitter. I mean, I think this is the Raheem Mostert kind of a guy. And it's tough. I got my defensive tackle, Ali Gay. Yaya Diaby's sitting right there. He's a tremendously productive player. I like the kid that you interviewed that I might want to take right here, Fehoko. I like Fehoko quite a bit. Let's see, the top corners. They looked at Terrell Smith from Minnesota.
Did you get a chance to see that at all? I wanted to ask your opinion on that because I thought after talking to Fehoko, like some of his answers, it felt like 49ers guy through and through. And I loved especially his response on, what he needs to work on going into the league and what he needs to focus on. For anyone who didn't get the chance to read it, he basically mentioned that, finishing, he's like, I need to get better at finishing, being a little bit more agile, bending the edges. He said, I felt like I left a lot of money on the field with some missed tackle for loss opportunities over the last couple of seasons. He had 19 and a half tackles for loss last year, and he's saying that he left more on the table. I thought that was it really stuck with me when he said something like that. And I just thought that aside from what he brings physically, he has the mentality that I think would definitely endear him to the 49ers as well. You know what?
In this 5th round pick, I love Fehoko, but I think he'll be there in that next pick. I'm going with Keaton Mitchell. I think Keaton Mitchell is the kind of explosive, back that could round out this running back room. I think he's just so explosive. I think you can flex him out, play him as a receiver, use him as a return guy. I love Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina. So I went with the speedster. It's a little bit of a luxury pick there, but with some other needs, but I think the value's there. All right, you're up now. You're at pick 173. Just a few picks later. I picked at 164. You're at 173. The next pick is not till 90. So what are you thinking here? Will Mallory's on the board. Demario Douglas, Rayshawn Wright, Ronnie Bell. A lot of people have said they like this Hunter Lupke, who's a fullback, I guess, maybe North Dakota State. Dante Stills, Ali Gay. Some good players for sure. Diaby's there if you want to go. Max Duggan is another guy that I really like. Jake Hayner. Incoom. There's a lot of interesting players sitting right there. They looked at Antonio Mafi on the offensive line. Jordan Howden. What do you think? Is there a position that you want me to call up for you? You can take a look at the board.
Yeah, could you go to edge real quick? Because there's one guy in particular. I don't know if I didn't see if he got taken yet or not.
So it's Ali Gay, Yaya Diaby, Incoom, Jose Ramirez, Fehoko, Tavius Robinson, who they did look at, Brevin Allen, who's interesting from Campbell. I love the Jose Ramirez,
that's who I was looking at.
And Dawan Johnson. Jose Ramirez is way low in this mock.
Yeah,
I mean he's way too low.
I think he was up at the top. He was kind of
was he?
240, I think 230.
Maybe they've moved him up.
Yeah, 241.
There he is. He's 241. Yeah, so 241. He's a little on the light side though. He's 6'1", 242. The Niners. He is twitched up. He had the incredible 3-cone drill, and you could see that 3-cone drill when in the East-West game when he flattened to the quarterback and he had this crazy agility. I mean, he took an angle, Jordan, that you don't see often. I mean, it was like it made me roll that thing back and forth like 25 times. I'm like, this guy can flatten to the quarterback and take angles that only the most elite rushers can. I mean, he's got some Von Miller kind of crazy bend to him. But he's also 240 pounds, and they typically go with guys who are closer to 270.
So it's interesting because the last mock I did, I actually took Keaton Mitchell in this spot. So it's kind of funny. I'm like flipping because that was obviously the last pick. I wanted to add real quick too. Keaton Mitchell had 31 carries that went for over 15 yards last year, which was more than any running back in the country. So I think you nailed it with the Mostert, comparison there. He's somebody who has insane home run speed and would be a great addition to the backfield. I like Ramirez. I think he's a guy where
I do too. He's an awesome edge rusher.
Mm-hmm. And I think that he's somebody you can go a little outside of the mold of those guys that are, 6'4", 270 that you just seem to be drafting year after year. I think he's somebody that has bend and has the twitch that you can refine, but some guys either have it or they don't. And I think he's one of those guys who does. And you pair him with Chris Kocurek and Darryl Tapp, he could turn into a legitimate weapon as a pass rushing specialist, even if he never becomes a 3-down edge or he's not a guy that's, playing 50 snaps a game. He's somebody who could terrorize opposing quarterbacks on third down with just his natural pass rushing ability. And I would love to see what he could do after working with this 49ers defensive line, the coaching staff, and just the overall system that has made so many guys who have those athletic gifts realize those athletic gifts and turn them into contributors at the NFL level. You
like him more than Fehoko?
It's hard because I think they both do different things really well. I do think the way that the 49ers have addressed the interior has made because I think Fehoko is an edge at the next level, but I also think that he's really going to shine in a role where maybe he does kick into 3 tech or he's playing a lot of 4-eye. I think Ramirez can play that 9 tech, which they're going to be playing as long as Kocerek's there. And you'd like to think Kocerek's going to be there for a long time. So just in terms of a clear role forward, I think maybe Ramirez has a path to a more clear role as a pass rushing specialist in that 9 tech spot. But I like them both for different reasons. And for this, I've talked a ton about Fehoko. I wrote about him for anybody who didn't get the chance to see it. I would go Ramirez just to shake things up a bit here, but I think they're both great prospects.
Can't go wrong there. I love Jose Ramirez. That's a great one. All right, pick number 190, and DTR went 187 to the Patriots. Wow, that's interesting. Will he take the job from Mac Jones? All right, so we're at 190. Just looking at the board, Diaby's still there, and I love the fact that he combines, unbelievable athleticism and collegiate production. But I also like Max Duggan quite a bit. What do you think of Duggan? Because TCU was not supposed to be good. Duggan wasn't even supposed to be the starter, and he almost wins the Heisman. He's got 4.5 speed. They went 12-1. Are you a believer in Max Duggan, or do you not see special?
I don't really see special. I personally, I watched him throw at the combine. Nothing really stood out, and you have to think it's you're watching guys throw in shorts. It's not really a competitive environment in that sense, but I didn't see anything that jumped out to me that screamed this arm is going to translate well at the next level. I thought that, a lot of his intangibles were really good. Obviously, the medical procedure and the things that he overcame to get to the status he did, almost winning the Heisman, taking TCU to the national championship game is very commendable. I'm not really seeing it. I like Jake Haener a lot. I think he's somebody that I would take way quicker than I would take a guy like Duggan. I don't know if he's still on the board or not. But other than that,
Yeah, Haener's there. Haener's still there.
Yeah, I'd take Haener. I'll tell you what, that quarterback from Shepherd, Tyson Bagent, was a guy who was really interesting too. He had a really good combine. I'm not really sure where teams are at with him, but he had an arm that stood out that I thought was pretty good. But
what do you make of the talk that they've worked out Logan Bonner from Utah State a couple times? You seen him at all?
I haven't had the chance to watch him, but I'd imagine it's got to be some due diligence of some kind because I haven't seen him really. He's got maybe an undrafted arm that they bring in after because I haven't seen anything that would indicate he'd get drafted. But
it's funny. We're in a weird spot in the draft because now it's beauty in the eye of the beholder, right? Yeah. I mean, who do you see on the board that you think's great? I thought one of the deepest positions was tight end. Josh Wiley, Davis Allen, Braden Willis, all very attractive players. I mentioned the kid from Dak Allen from Eastern Kentucky. I kind of think Elijah Higgins from Stanford could be a movement tight end. But I'll tell you that one guy that I've been really hot to trot on, they don't need this position, but I'm telling you, this guy is an awesome player. We used to have this thing where when we were trying to figure out who the best players were, and we would go with, what positions do we believe in traits as opposed to what positions do we believe in production? And to me, you're always trying to marry elite physical traits with elite collegiate production. If you can get that, you get Aldon Smith, right? You get a guy who's wow, look at the size and the strength, and then look at the production. Oh my God! And then as long as the guy's a good guy, you really got something there. So I love the idea of marrying elite production and elite measurables. And the guy that I'm going to take here is going to surprise a lot of people, but I like this guy Charlie Thomas a lot from Georgia Tech. He's a linebacker, and you look at those numbers, you say 6'2", 216 pounds, but he was like second in the country in tackles. And then when you look at his speed and his playmaking ability, this guy's crazy fast. And I just think, to me, I'm going to lean into what is already a strength at linebacker. And I know there's Marcelino, and I know they're pretty loaded there. But this guy, to me, is a Pro Bowl linebacker, Charlie Thomas from Georgia Tech. I love Charlie Thomas. To me, that guy is so fast, so athletic, so productive. He's like second in the country in tackles, and he runs like the wind. He kind of fits their new mold of kind of the undersized linebacker. I just think he's going to be a great, great NFL player. So I'm going to take Charlie Thomas. You're at 247 now, and let's see who we talked about on the board. There's a number of guys that are no longer on the board. Jake Hayner's off. Fahoko is off. He went to Washington. Diaby went to the Cardinals. But you're sitting now with pick 247. And Badgent's on the board. Juice Scruggs is the top-rated player. Jordan Howden. Carl Brooks, who had a great Senior Bowl, the big defensive tackle from Bowling Green. He's there. Keandre Coburn, who a lot of people feel is a replacement for Kinlaw. They worked him out or went to dinner with him. He's on the board there. Lou Nichols is an interesting running back. You like Davis Allen, the tight end, quite a bit. I know Brad likes him a lot. He's there. Marte Mapu, Sac State kid, who's probably a maybe Pro Bowl special teamer. Saul DeVary's there, who Brad loves quite a bit from Old Dominion, the offensive guard / offensive tackle. He's probably more of a guard, but, he's still there. Is there a position you want me to highlight or call up so you can see who's on the board?
I'd be taking Davis Allen. I don't think we took a tight end yet, and I think that they don't necessarily I think so much is being made like they have to take a tight end in this class. I don't think they have to take any position, but I do think that this is a deep class, and if you can get Davis Allen at the end of round 7, I would do it. I'd be sprinting to the podium with the card with his name on it.
That's a good call. What do you like about him? Because, there's a lot of great tight ends in this draft. He played at Clemson. He's got good height, 6'5", 245. There seems like there's an ability to put on weight there. What's the strength of Allen's game?
I think the biggest thing is that he's a very reliable target. He has really big – I think he has 10-inch hands, really big hands, was really good at those contested 50-50 balls, great at high-pointing the ball, showed really good balance, maintaining – possession of the ball a couple times through the ground on really difficult catches. So he showed that kind of spectacular catchability as well. He had a really nice game winner against, I want to say, South Carolina in overtime, where he ended up high pointing a ball in the end zone. But what really, really stood out was the receiving stuff is great, but if you're going to play tight end for the 49ers, you have to not only be a capable blocker, you have to be a willing blocker. And I did an article on him about 3 weeks ago, I think, and I highlighted some of the plays that I pulled up when I was watching his tape where he's 15 yards away from where the ball is. He's blocking on the backside of a play, and he's driving a guy into the turf well out of the, area of where this play is unfolding. And he did that time after time where it was just so many of these plays where you could see the effort was something you could never question when he was blocking. And I think that's something that would endear him to the 49ers and their front office is not only that he's good at blocking, but the fact that he never shied away from it. And you could tell it was something he took pride in with the effort that he put into it. And I love seeing a guy that far away from a play, taking it personal and driving a guy into the sidelines or into the dirt when realistically, whatever the outcome of that matchup is, it's not going to affect the outcome of the play. And you're still taking it upon yourself to have that pride to win that matchup. I think that matters a ton. That hunger to want to be that good of a blocker matters a ton. So for me, he checks all the boxes. I honestly, I would take him in the 3rd round with one of those picks. If they had good intel that he wasn't going to be around, when they were picking later, I would take him with 99, 101, or 102. I think he's that good of a player, and I would have no issues at all if they took him that high.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to I put him down as the pick. To me that's a no-brainer. I mean, if you get to that point in the draft, we're talking about we're talking about 247 picks in. If he's there in the 7th round, I think that's a steal. I think you got to do that. Now I'm coming to pick number 253. And this is where I think you look for the deepest positions in the draft. And to me, the edge group is just tremendously deep. And the guy that when I watch his film, I'm just like, wow, this guy is something else. Is Dawan Johnson from Toledo. And he's 275. Is he an end? Is he a tackle? He's kind of an undersized interior rusher, but he's got a little bit more speed than most interior guys, and he probably could play defensive end. I just like him. I like that program. I like the MAC. They list him at 6'2", 285 in this mock, but Dawan Johnson, to me, it's that guy. Brandon Hill is another guy, the safety from Pittsburgh. I could see John Lynch and Brandon Hill because he's just such a thumper. And, John was a thumper. But I'm going to go Dawan Johnson from Toledo. I just think Dawan. The other guy that's not in this mock draft that I really do like is Tyrus Wheat from Mississippi State. For whatever reason, they don't include him in this mock draft. There's also one other guy who's just one of the freakiest guys I've seen as far as player like sleeper players. The linebacker for Troy, his name's Carlton Marshall, and he's 5'9", 210. But man, if you watch his Troy State film. And I don't know what this guy is going to play at 5'9", 210. I mean, he's like 5'9", 210, 5'9", 215, but he just is awesome. The guy makes incredible tackles all over the field. He's probably a linebacker. He might be more of could be some kind of a, hybrid linebacker, safety, sub-package, special teamer. But, I mean, if I got an extra late-round pick and I would take that Carlton Marshall, I mean, the guy had well over 100 tackles. There's 135 tackles for Troy. And Troy is not like, playing for UC Davis. I mean, it's a tiny little school, but it's in the middle of Alabama. There's great athletes all over that league. And this guy if you watch his film, it's crazy how instinctive he is and how he flows to the football. But he's not in this mock. So I'll go Dawan Johnson at pick 253, and you're up next with pick 255, and this is the final pick. And this is also kind of interesting because a lot of these guys, now you can look at the board and say, well, who do you think you could sign after the draft? I mean, they've looked at Jordan Howden, and, you look at what we've done so far. You went wide receiver, nickel corner, interior offensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, safety, running back, edge rusher, linebacker, tight end, another edge rusher, and now we're at 255. Is there a position you're looking for, or do you want me to roll down the list here? Let me see who the interesting names are. Carl Brooks from Bowling Green, Darius Davis, a speedster wide receiver, Coburn, if you believe that they want to replace Kinlaw with Coburn. He's sitting there. He's very low on all these lists. Marte Mapu from Sac State's there. Christian Young, who's listed here as a safety for Arizona, but I could see him being like more of a linebacker. Mikel Jones from Syracuse is a kind of a tone-setting linebacker. Saul DeVary's there if you want to go O-line. They looked at this kid, Lance Boykin, who's a good-sized corner, who played, my buddy was the recruiting coordinator, or is the recruiting coordinator at Coastal Carolina, and he's been talking up Boykin, I should say, Lance Boykin. Oh, there's Carlton Marshall. He's right there from Troy. Yeah, they list him at 5'7", 213 pounds. I mean, that's wild that the linebacker could make the NFL at that size, but this guy's an unbelievable player, even though he's 5'7". There's Jake Witt, big tackle from Northern Michigan. And some people link him. Jake Moody, if you want to go kicker. Do you go kicker? Chad Ryland. He's got a big leg. 55. He made one from 55 this year. Adam, this is kind of an interesting guy. This Jason Adamilola from Notre Dame, an interior rusher, about 285. Pretty good motor, pretty good athlete overall. Is there a position that you want to look at?
Yeah, tackle.
Offensive tackle. Okay. It's funny. The guy, Dane Brugler, just did a mock draft, and he, in the mock draft, had the 49ers drafting Warren McClendon out of Georgia. And I think that would be an interesting pick. I don't see McClendon here. He might be listed as a guard. But McClendon's interesting because he played, even though he's 6'4", he played tackle for Georgia. And God knows he blocks some damn good players in the SEC. And he's not quite tackle size. I don't see him here, so maybe he was already taken. The one tackle that I like on this list that's kind of interesting player is Palczewski.
Illinois, right?
From Illinois, who finished his, maybe he went. He might have went. Oh, no, there he is. He's right there. Alex Palczewski, 6'6", 303 pounds. He finished his career at Illinois with like 170 consecutive pass blocking snaps without allowing a pressure. And has a wrestling background, and he's already graduated with a degree. He's a little bit older because of COVID, but he's interesting. Ryan Hayes from Michigan's another guy. He's there. I know they looked at Hayes.
The guy that I really like that I would actually probably take here is Malasale Amave-Lalu from Oregon. I think he's a guy who would be a great prospect to kind of develop. As you can see, the size there is great. I think he's listed at like 6'5.5". He's almost 6'6", 317. Great RAS score, really good athletic traits. He has 10.5-inch hands, just huge mitts that are really, that plays really well at the next level. Your ability to get your hands on guys, really dictate the leverage when you're engaging in those blocks. I think he has the ability to move, get out in space. And I think the biggest thing, Larry, with offensive linemen in this draft, because everybody expects them to take a tackle and everybody wants them to take a tackle. When you're taking guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or here, the 7th round, if they end up starting, great. Like things worked out well for you, obviously, but that should never be the expectation. And I think that as much as we don't know what to expect with a full season's worth of work from Colton McKivitz, I think he'll be fine at right tackle. I don't think it's going to be this major weakness. I don't think it's something where you have to go into this draft saying you need a tackle no matter what. But I do think it's a great opportunity to get a guy that, kind of red shirts, for lack of a better term, at the next level, where they're not going to be pressed into a prominent role right away, but you bet on those athletic traits. And we talk so much about, Chris Kocurek for good reason, but Chris Forster has been incredible with that offensive line. And when you see what he's been able to do with guys like Aaron Banks going into year 3 now, like Spencer Burford during his rookie season going into year 2, and even a guy like Jake Brendel, who's been in the league, but who's able to develop into a high-end starter at the position, I think that Chris Forster deserves some of that love we give Chris Kocurek, where it's like, hey, get this guy an athlete, and let's bet on our own coaching staff to develop a guy. And I think that Molly Sala is a guy who could potentially develop into a starter at right tackle for them. And at the very least, you have an extremely athletic swing tackle prospect that you could develop into that role as well. But I love the athletic gifts. I love the total package you're getting as a developmental prospect. And I heard from someone that Adam Peters was there at Oregon's Pro Day, and he was a guy that they might have been taking a look at. So he's somebody to me that checks all the boxes of what I'd be looking for in terms of I'm swinging for the fences on high upside without sinking a ton of draft capital. And if right tackle's a huge and pressing need going into 2024, guess what? You have your 1st round pick again, and you can target a player that's probably more likely to pan out right away in that draft rather than reaching this year for a guy. Can you really expect a guy that you're taking at pick 100 to be a long-term starter in the league? I think that it's much better to not reach for positional need when you're picking that far back in the draft.
I think a pretty successful mock draft. I mean, just to review, we started with Jaden Reed from Michigan State. You get a very polished receiver that can man almost any spot, so you got great versatility there. Catrell Clark is a very productive slot corner who's, if you watch his film, I mean, he just makes lots of plays on the football. Stromberg gives them an interior offensive lineman to, probably groom behind Jake Brendel for the next couple of years. Byron Young gives them a rotational defensive tackle who's got a lot of athleticism. Jay Ward gives them a safety who probably could play right away. Keaton Mitchell gives them a speed back. That's an element that they don't currently have. Jose Ramirez, I think, is going to be a very productive edge rusher, a lot of speed off the edge. Charlie Thomas is hyperactive, very instinctive, fast linebacker, kind of fits their mold of undersized guys. Davis Allen gives them a big-time tight end value in the 7th round. Dawan Johnson, another rotational player that can play games up front, and then the big Oregon tackle to finish. And then, in addition, you added a extra 5th-round pick in next year's draft from Carolina. So, overall, real attractive draft. Is there one player that you could picture not being drafted, but that they would come knocking for after the draft? The one guy that makes sense to me is the guy that's been working, if they're going to keep Aiyuk. Of course, if they're going to trade Aiyuk, it doesn't make sense. But the Clemson wide receiver who used to be a 5-star out of high school, 5-star recruit, Joseph Nagata, has been working out in Sacramento. He's a Sacramento kid. I think he's from Folsom. He's been working out in Sacramento with Aiyuk. And for whatever reason, Nagata just never kind of came of age with Clemson. Had some minor injuries, but, really flashed that 5-star ability. And he's a bigger receiver, big body, 217 pounds, pretty good receiver, pretty good runner. I could see a guy like that if he doesn't get drafted, and Aiyuk's going to be here. I could see the Niners bringing in a guy like Nagata after the draft as a undrafted free agent. Is there anybody that you think they may eye?
I think that's part of the biggest benefit from some of these pre-draft meetings they've been doing. I think that they do a really good job of identifying players who really aren't projected to be there or aren't projected to be taken during the draft that will be there when that priority free agent period pops up. A couple of the names that stood out to me with the guys they met with, Stephen Jones from Appalachian State. He's a cornerback who I think would definitely fit well with that group there, and somebody that you can kind of, again, bet on some upside there, and you're not stuck with a big investment into a player there. Like, that's the biggest thing here, right? Like, if you're using draft picks, there's a little bit more of an investment given the financial burden that's coming with that. So I think that that's where you need to be a little bit more calculated with the risks you take. But I think that they're at a spot now where they're just such an attractive destination for a lot of these guys who will end up being priority free agents that, I know that they met with Boykin from Coastal Carolina. He's another guy who, if he doesn't go, I think would be a great fit. You'd talk a bit about him. I expect him to be drafted based on, some of the teams that he had told me that he had met with. But Jordan Howden's another guy who I think if he, for whatever reason, doesn't go, I think they'd be scrambling to get him right away in that first wave of undrafted guys. So the thing with this draft that really stands out is there are so many more players because of the extra COVID availability. And there's a lot more players who could fall into that top 350 or so than there would be in a given year. So I think that there's always a bit of a stigma that comes with it. This player went undrafted. Why did teams pass on this guy 7 times over? But there's just such an abundance of talent now because of all the extra eligibility that came with those COVID years that I think there are some really talented guys who are going to end up falling out. And I think that's where the 49ers have a really big chance to make a big splash, where they can bring in some of these guys. And we've seen the success they've had with undrafted guys there too. So I would say for sure the 2 corners, Boykin and Jones, and then maybe Jordan Howden. I think that's definitely going to be an area where they kind of look at DBs.
We didn't take a quarterback and we didn't take a kicker. Do you think they're going with Zane Gonzalez? Do you think that a guy like Bonner could be an after the draft guy?
Honestly, I'm like, it's kind of like a wild conspiracy, but like part of me is hoping that whole Zane Gonzalez thing was just something to leverage Robbie Gould into coming back. I don't know what the relationship's like there. I don't know what the market is there. A team who doesn't have a kicker right now is the Rams. It would be hilarious if Robbie Gould ended up there. But I'm looking at the landscape. Like, where is he going to go? It seems like he wants to play. He's still one of the better kickers in the sport. And, I don't really know what to make of Zane Gonzalez. I know he's kind of had some up and down seasons, but I'm very big on not going cheap at the kicker position. And if you find a guy like Robbie Gould, you figure it out and you pay the guy. You obviously can't let him just have a blank check, but I think that's a position where you can't afford to cut corners and try and save money or try and cut down cap space or whatever it may be, because we've seen with this team the last couple of years how important he is in those big time spots. And you think back to that game in Green Bay, having somebody who could go out there in that environment and just split the uprights from 40 yards out and, that kind of setting, it's invaluable. So I'm kind of hoping that there's still a small chance that, even though we've seen all the reports and he wants to kick elsewhere, that eventually they realize they're the best situation for one another and they're able to bring him back for a year or 2 more years or whatever it may be. I'm just not big on drafting rookie kickers, Larry. I would rather let somebody else draft a rookie kicker. They end up cutting them. I bring them in for cheap, and then they're in our building, and, hey, we figure it out. We like this guy. That happened with some kickers like Harrison Butker in Kansas City, was drafted by another team, ended up with the Chiefs, has been a great kicker for them. But if you look historically over the last 10 years, there's been 17 kickers drafted, and only one of them is on the second contract with the team that drafted them. It's a very, very low success rate for sustained success at the position. And I know people love Jake Moody, but history tells us that the odds of him being the 49ers answer at kicker for the next decade really aren't great. So I would look to a veteran before I draft a guy if it's up to me personally.
I agree. Even when you pick a kicker that is going to be in the league for 10 years, doesn't mean that he's not going to bounce around a couple times initially and then settle in. I'd rather find the kicker who's already bounced around and pay him than take a chance. Because we've seen high kickers bust, and we've seen kickers that were invested day 2 picks and they didn't make it. So, it's one of those things. It's a skill. It's you just got to stay current. You got to really stay current with your kickers, because they get good and then they go bad and then they get good again and they go bad again. 2 last ones here. Penny, new channel member. Penny, thanks for joining the Krueg Show. Appreciate you. And Mark Hope with the super chat says, is Will Levis's physical stature causing him to rise up the draft board, or was his average combine looked at differently now? This is a speculative thing right here, just talking about Will Levis's draft position. Where do you think Will Levis is going to wind up going? I mean, everybody knows he throws an incredible looking ball, but I don't know. I've heard some pushback on him as a prospect, and people were not enamored without those pictures of him, with his posing in the mirror, so on and so forth. I mean, those things kind of matter when you're a leader in the room. Not that, it's a deal breaker or anything, but that was just kind of an odd thing to see. Draft Tech has Will Levis as the 4th quarterback going 15th overall. I just think with the way he throws at 6'4", 230, that somebody's going to want to take a chance on him in the top 10. I'd be shocked if he fell to 15, but I've seen a couple mocks where he's fallen into the 20s. What's your best guess on which quarterback do you think goes first, and where does Levis go?
I'll answer the Levis one first because I feel more confident in that. I think he ends up going no farther than Vegas at 7. I think that the Raiders are a team that would take a chance on him. He has arm talent. Like, it's there. It's on tape. I've seen him throw in person. Great velocity. You can let it rip. And I think, just like you said, like, teams will take a chance on that if they can. My biggest holdup with him is this guy's like putting mayonnaise in his coffee and like eating bananas with the peel on. And to me, that's just like, that signifies you're a total nut job. And hey, if you're a box safety or a linebacker, hey, I want nut job playing that position. I don't want a nut job playing quarterback and being the face of my franchise. So for that alone, I'm kind of like pausing, like, hey man, like, I don't know if this is just a joke or some kind of gimmick, but those are pretty big red flags to me. I'm like, I don't understand what the deal is with these, but I keep seeing these videos of him doing that. And I'm like, that's kind of setting my red flag radar off here. But I think he'll go no later than that. And I thought it would be Stroud, Larry, as the first quarterback taken. I thought he's probably as safe as you can get in this class, and safe is such a relative word. The thing with Bryce Young is that I think he does a lot of things really well. He's good at improvising. It's just he's small, and I'm not one to buy in completely to like the size thing. But it's like Kyler Murray had like 25 pounds on him. Like there's a difference between being like short and being small. And Kyler Murray's short. Bryce Young is small. And I don't know how confident a team's going to be in Carolina, where they invested as much as they did to move up to 1, and you're betting the whole future of your franchise on a guy like that. And then, the polar opposite is, you have Anthony Richardson, who's this incredible athletic prospect who has all of the arm talent in the world and can do all these insane things with the ball in his hands, but didn't have the production necessarily. There were some reasons why, there's more context to it, but it's really dicey. I would say CJ Stroud, just because I think he kind of falls in the middle of that, where he has the upside, but he also, I think, is a little bit more safe in terms of having prototypical arm strength, prototypical size of the position. But I'm really interested because I think the way that Carolina moved up is kind of similar to the way the 49ers moved up, where unless they had one guy in mind, which we kind of know for sure wasn't the case with the 49ers, they've kind of made that clear. It wasn't just about one guy. Why are you moving up that fast and giving up that much? Like, let the board play out, see who falls where. I think that, I don't know if panicking is the right word, Larry, but I don't know. Like, what do you think about that? Like, moving up to get a guy 2 months before the draft starts, unless you have one guy in mind at 1 there, I'm not a big fan of the process they went through to get there, because I don't think there's one guy that's head and shoulders above the rest in this class.
It's so tough because so much of the formula or the information is not even known. When these trades get consummated, even they haven't had their pro days. Sometimes these deals are made before the combine. We don't even have a constant backdrop in which to evaluate them against each other. Personally, Bryce Young is tiny, and Alabama hides a lot of your weaknesses, and he didn't take a lot of hits. And it's like every hit in the NFL, that guy's almost going to be out for the year. I mean, it's just, he's small. Stroud, I don't know if I believe in the Buckeye quarterbacks, and he had awesome receivers. Levis, I watched a lot of Kentucky. That guy lost a ton of games, and I don't think he processes well. I don't think he throws with anticipation well. He's just your big, strong arm guy who's got great tangibles, but I don't see special there. If anything, the guy that's the most intriguing to me is Anthony Richardson, just because he's so good in the red zone and he's so big, so fast, and he's raw. But man, I would want to invest time into developing him because he's so dominating physically that if he figures it out, you've got a Mahomes-like figure. I mean, you've got a guy who's just got a great arm, great speed. He's at the top of the scale athletically. So Richardson's super intriguing to me. But I'll say this: I'll make the prediction right now. I really believe that the top 5 quarterbacks, in any way you want to group it, it's Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, Hendon Hooker. To me, I will take the future of the next 5 guys over those guys. I would take the future of Haener, Tanner McKee, Jaron Hall, DTR, and you're flip a coin on Clayton Tune, Max Duggan. I'll take those 5 guys' future over the top guys. I really believe that between Haener, McKee, Hall, DTR, Duggan, Tune, you got some special guys there. There's going to be a couple special quarterbacks there. I think it's probably Hall and I'm not really sure. Maybe Hall and Tune, maybe Hall and Duggan. I don't know, but I think Hooker's got some intriguing things to him, but Hooker's receivers were so damn good that I have a hard time evaluating him, and he's older. So, I mean, I like the timing. I like the year that Hooker had this year for sure. But I would say Anthony Richardson is, to me, the one guy that it's like, wow, if you hit on this guy and he becomes what he potentially could become, you could vault yourself into the top tier of the NFL. You know, if
Yeah,
you're
and I think
Seattle, let's say you're Seattle and you go for Anthony Richardson and Richardson becomes this monster stud, you're going to be one of the top teams in the NFC.
yeah, and if you're Seattle, you also are at a point now where it's like, as great as Geno's been, when are you going to be in a position? Like, I think Seattle's going to be good very fast. I thought they were a playoff team last year, so it's not like they weren't good last year, but I think they're going to be a contending team very soon. How soon are you going to have a top 5 pick again? So I think that's something they absolutely have to be weighing. And we've seen them. They're, I don't know if you've seen the selfies. Like, they've met with all the top quarterbacks and they're taking pictures together with John Schneider and Pete Carroll. They're going to all these pro days, and they should be, because even if you fall on, taking Will Anderson or maybe Christian Gonzalez or Tyree Wilson, a player at a different position, you need to gauge, when are we going to be in this position. That was something that I believe Kyle Shanahan said directly when the Niners made that move up from 12 to 3. Like, hey, we're in the NFC Championship game every year. We're healthy. We don't know when we're going to be in striking distance of landing a top 5 pick at the quarterback position again sometime soon. It would take catastrophic injury to this roster. That's what it took for them to have a pick where they weren't even in the top 10. So you have to kind of also have some self-awareness and think about, like, even if you're not completely out on Geno Smith right now, and I think they should believe in Geno Smith for a lot of reasons, you also have to think, like, am I going to have this good of an opportunity over the next 5 years? And am I confident that Geno can be the guy for the next 5 years while we're on the upswing? Because, again, barring a catastrophic circumstance for Seattle, I don't see how they're picking top 5 anytime soon. They have a really good football team, and they have a good coach. They have a good GM. They have a good organization. They're very well run, and I don't think that they're going to be a team that's going to be out of contention at all. They'll be in the mix of things, and typically really good quarterbacks don't fall into the range they're probably going to be picking. So I definitely think they have to at least do their homework there, right, and see if there's maybe a fit.
2 last thoughts, and we'll let you go. 49er pre-draft visits included Virginia's wide receiver Dontavian Wicks. I went and watched film on him. He's a big receiver. I don't know how fast he is, because he didn't look overly fast. I didn't see a lot of separation there. Virginia's a pretty solid program. This guy, definitely an interesting player. Had 9 touchdowns in 2021 in 12 games, over 1,200 yards that year. He ran, but then at the combine, at 6'1", 206, he ran 4.62. He had a 39-inch vertical, but 4.62 is slow. That's really slow. What do you are you hearing anything on Wicks? Do you have a thought on him at all? He's kind of an interesting name that's been thrown around. And then the last question was, Baldinger is saying that Sam Darnold could be the week 1 starter if given a fair chance to compete. I've heard a couple people kind of suggest that Darnold could be the week 1 starter. Do you think the Niners are whispering to some of these national reporters that, man, Darnold looks good, or talking up Darnold for some reason? It seems bizarre that I think it was Rappaport that had it. Oh, Darnold could be the week 1 starter. And then now Baldy's like, hey, Darnold could be the week 1 starter. There are no games. Why do you think they're saying this?
I think it all comes back to, he signed so early in free agency on a deal that was so dependent on incentives that I don't know what Sam Darnold's market would have been, but I don't think he would be in a position where he only would be going to teams that needed a backup. He could have competed for one of the many starting jobs that are going to be open up, or at least open for competition this year. And this is just my pure 100% speculation on my end. I would have a hard time believing that he wouldn't have come to San Francisco as fast as he did if there wasn't some sort of spoken agreement in place that was like, hey, we're not giving you the job. We're not telling you it's the job. All we know is that we have 2 very young quarterbacks that are very inexperienced. One of them had serious surgery done on their elbow. We don't have a clear timetable. There's a very realistic outcome. If you come in here and you play at a high level in the offseason, and you come in and you command the offense, you earn the respect of your teammates, and you're playing at a high level in camp, there's a realistic path to you getting this job. And on the flip side, looking at it from Sam Darnold's point of view, where else in the NFL would it be better to rehab your image and rehab your value than playing with the San Francisco 49ers, who get more out of quarterbacks than any other team in the sport and have done more with less than any other team during Kyle Shanahan's tenure. So to me, I think that there's just this kind of understanding that's like, hey, we know Sam Darnold has talent. He knows there's an opportunity for him to, kind of earn that job with his performance this offseason. And if Brock Purdy's timetable isn't clear, or, he's not getting the reps he needs in camp, yeah, I think there's a very realistic scenario where he does start. And I think that people are going to be very surprised with how Sam Darnold looks in a stable environment with good weapons, with good coaching, and just an environment that he hasn't had the chance to flourish in yet at the NFL level. I think that there's plenty of talent there. And I understand the skepticism from what we've seen of him in the NFL. You have to understand that there's a skill position group of Kyle Shanahan behind the controls is a lot different than Adam Gase on a terrible Jets team. And I think that Sam Darnold is going to surprise a lot of people.
He looked good if you look at the highlight reel of 2022. And do you make anything of Brock's statement last week that I might not play? I might not play in 2023. Is that something that he's just trying to control, like the expectations? Or do you think that he thinks the 49ers are putting pressure on him by making it sound like he could be back, relatively soon, that he wants to kind of put this out there that, hey, it could be, could be the whole year kind of a thing, so that there's lower pressure on him to get it dialed up? I mean, it's his body. I mean, he's going to get the final say on if he's ready or not. But what's your read on his comment?
I just think it's kind of, like you said, taking a little bit of pressure off this timeline, where even the most optimistic of timelines puts him in like right around the start of camp. So I think it just kind of like, it wasn't like he said, my expectation is that I won't play this year, or there's a serious chance I don't play this year. It was just kind of like, hey, I might not be able to play this year. I don't know how my elbow is going to respond. There's a lot of rehab. There's a lot of physical, therapy he's going to have to go through, getting his just range of motion back and all the things that go into it with a major surgery like that. So I just felt like he was kind of keeping the door open to the possibility that he won't be back right at the start of camp, or won't be back right away at week one. And, I don't think it'll be for lack of him, not wanting to be out there. I don't think it's a situation where if it's like, hey, this is kind of a pain tolerance thing or something like that. Like, I don't think Brock Purdy's saying, hey, I'm going to sit this year out, we'll attack it in 2024. He just kind of knows this is uncharted territory for most NFL players. There's only been a couple quarterbacks who've had this procedure done, so we don't have a great understanding of the timetable. So I really felt like it was just him kind of simmering down this expectation that, they think Brock Purdy is the leader in the clubhouse. So as soon as training camp gets here, he's going to be out there throwing to these receivers. He might still have a brace on his arm, or he might not be in a position where he can do that at that point, for all we know. And I think he was just kind of saying that as a reminder to everybody that, we got to temper our expectations.
Just pump the brakes. Yeah. All right, man. Good stuff. If people are catching you and they know that you write for Niners Nation, what do you got going draft week? What are you going to be doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
Yeah, I got some more prospect specific stuff coming out the next couple of days. I have something that'll be up tomorrow. That's about the there's a great chart that had all the numbers that the 49ers have averaged for athletic testing at every position. So it'll tell you during John Lynch's tenure, what's the average 40 time, or the average short shuttle time, or the average wingspan of a given player at a given position. So I think that's just another tool that we could have in our tool belt to kind of, play detective here and take a guess at who they might be picking, and take a look at some of the athletic numbers we see. Obviously, tape and the face-to-face meetings are really important too, but the athletic testing can give us kind of a blueprint of what they're looking for position to position. So I basically highlighted all of the, the positions and the number that was the athletic testing number for that position that stood out. So for example, with the receivers, their short shuttle was a faster time than all but 4 other teams in the NFL. So the 49ers really value that short shuttle time based on the 8 receivers they've taken under John Lynch's watch. So that's just something to keep an eye on. If you are looking at a prospect, you see a receiver met with the 49ers, doesn't mean it's going to be foolproof, but you can kind of take a look and see if this guy has a horrible short shuttle time. Odds are the 49ers might not have serious interest there. And if there's a guy kind of flying under the radar who you've heard they have interest with, maybe you can connect one of these numbers. So I'm just kind of trying to do my best to add some different things that'll help us get a good gauge on who they might be looking at or who they might want, which I think is especially important because we're not really going to get too many national leaks on who the team's looking at in the 5th round. Everything right now is these teams that have first-round picks. So I'm trying to do my best to kind of help everybody get a better sense of who the Niners might be taking pretty much.
Dude, your content is always good, dude. Thanks for stopping by. We'll check out. Everybody needs to check out Niners Nation throughout the week of the draft. And Jordan, great stuff, man. We'll talk to you in and around the draft and get your thoughts on who they select. And appreciate you jumping in on the mock draft tonight. We had a lot of fun.
Absolutely, free Draymond Green. I hope he comes back with a vengeance in Game 4.
Thanks, brother. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
There you go, Jordan Elliott. Check him out, Niners Nation. Phenomenal. And his content is really, really good on the 49ers. All right, coming up next, we're going to have a quick mention of our sponsors. We'll hit one more round through the chat, and then we will bid you farewell on the Krueg Show.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show. Tomorrow on the show, 2 o'clock, I'm going to be on Wayne Breezy's channel, I believe. Me and Breezy hooking it up. We were trying to hook it up every Wednesday, but last week I had some conflict that I couldn't do. So Wayne Breezy tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'll be joining him on his channel. And then tomorrow night, normally we go Tuesday, Thursday with Vish, but Vish couldn't do it tonight. So we're going tomorrow night at 6:45 p.m. me and Vish on Vish's channel. We'll have a bunch of videos coming out tomorrow as well on the Krueg Show channel, so check it out on YouTube. Thanks to my son for putting those things together. One super chat here from 49er George 365 makes the 1999 investment. Wow. Says, Larry, if this year's draft prospects have the commitment and the consistency that you've had, everything will be fine. Cheers. Faithful. 49er George, thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Very kind of you to say. Yeah, we're loving the channel. Loving doing all this stuff and loving these shows. We had a wild show last night after the Warrior game. So tomorrow, Breezy and Vish. Thursday, we got game 3. No Draymond Green. Warriors Kings. Maybe the Warriors' last stand. So that's coming up tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. We'll have a post-game after with Baller and Red and maybe Danny, maybe Cy, maybe John Dickinson. Who knows? Who knows who'll be on tomorrow night after Warriors and Kings, game number 3. And then Friday, bright and early at 9 a.m., Grant Napier. I'm going to be on Grant Napier's channel Friday at 9 a.m., And then we were going to do a bunch of stuff this week with Damon Bruce, but I know he's been going to the fish shows. So he's been kind of putting the channel on hold while he goes out to the Greek and enjoys fish. So there you go. So we'll pick up next week with Damon and do a lot of stuff with him. But good week so far, and we got a lot more coming up. So thanks for supporting the Krueg Show. Thanks for joining us on all of our live streams. Check out our videos. And hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, that helps the algorithm. More people will find our shows. If you hit subscribe, every time we go live, you'll get notified. And for $4.99 a month, you can be a Krueg Show channel member for all the exclusive content that they get. Until tomorrow, have a great night, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to